And it's with this aspect of Christ's love in mind that Paul writes to the church in Ephesians, in Ephesus, submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. We are to submit to one another. This is a principle that's called mutual submission. I submit to you, you submit to me, we submit to one another. I mean, this is a command for Christ's followers, that we are to live in submission to one another. And then the idea of wives submitting to their husbands is one application of this greater principle. And husbands are to submit to their wives, which is why we're told to love our wives the way Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. That is an application of submission. Children are supposed to obey their parents in everything. Another application of the principle of submission. A family is supposed to be living in mutual submission to one another. And the question is, why would we do this? What good reason is there for me to make everything I have available to the people in my family? We have to get this right, because I know what you're thinking right now. I would love to submit to my wife. But have you met my wife? You know, if I could have 5 minutes with Paul, I could tell him my story about how disrespectful my wife is to me, and he would understand my story, and then he would put a clause in the Bible, maybe some parentheses around it, kind of giving me an out. Or wives are thinking, you know what, submit to my husband, he would take advantage of me, he would do this, he would walk on me like a doormat, blah, blah, blah. There's reasons that I don't submit to my husband, okay? Why do we submit to one another in the context of a family? We have to get this right, or we'll never get traction on this very, very powerful teaching. And so why do we submit to one another? Right here. Out of reverence for Christ. That I don't submit to you because you deserve it, or because you earned it, because you warrant it, because you're worth it. No. I submit to you for Christ's sake. Out of reverence for Christ. Because we all know what would happen if we submitted to one another when the other deserved it. We would never submit to one another, right? And because who deserves that kind of love? It would never happen. But we do it for Christ's sake, that I will leverage all of my assets, all of my time, all of my abilities, all of my power for your benefit, because that is what he did for me when I didn't deserve it. That while I was a sinner, while I was rebelling against him, he put me first. That he leveraged all he had for my sake. And so out of reverence for what Christ has done for us, we too should be submitting to one another. And this is such a powerful relational dynamic. I don't think there's anything more powerful on the planet between people than when we get this right. Which is why Jesus said, first and foremost, the world will know you are my disciples when you love one another the way I have loved you, by submitting to one another. When we get this right, amazing things happen. And this is a beautiful thing in the context of family. This is what family is to look like. This is the ideal. The wives be submitting to husbands, and husbands loving wives the way Christ loved the church, and parents loving and supporting their children, and children listening to and obeying their parents. Mutual submission. It's the ideal. We're in tension. We're here in our reality. But what might this look like in the context of a family? Well, at the risk of oversimplifying this beautiful, beautiful dynamic, this principle from the life and teaching of Jesus, I'd like to just give one question that might kind of embody this idea of mutual submission in your family that I think could radically change things in your home. That if husbands were asking wives this question, and wives asking husbands, and parents asking children, and children asking parents, that this could be a game changer. What is this question? Well, it's just this. What can I do to help?